So
George Tatum was the other Americanist, and David Robb was the head of the department.
okay.
And I was his graduate assistant for a
wow.
while, as a matter of fact.
I think you were in Buffalo too for a while.
First job was I was curatorial assistant
Okay.
to the director, which it was then the Albright when I went there. Knox later gave him a lot of money and added his name to the place.
Oh, that contemporary too.
Yeah.
Was that Knox?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
just coming in. In
Yeah.
fact, the Pollock arrived almost the week I got there.
Oh, gee.
And he was supposed to come and sign it, but he didn't. He got killed first. Car accident on Long Island.
So that was, gosh, what an exciting time that must have been
Oh, it was.
in the contemporary art field. I mean, did you feel like you knew what was happening with this whole New York school thing and that it was kind of unfolding as a...
I knew most of those guys.
Like who?
I didn't know Pollock, he was dead. But Rothko I knew fairly well. And Franz Klein I saw any number of times. Clifford Still sort of honored the museum with depositing his painting. They're very majestic, really. Motherwell,
Yeah.
several times. Aniskevich, I liked him a lot. Put the two circumstances together, low man on the totem pole and living in Buffalo. Everybody wanted to go to Niagara Falls, and guess who got elected?
Oh, who did you take to Niagara Falls?
Franz Klein. He wanted to pee in it. Rothko thought it was the most majestic thing he'd ever seen, and so did Clifford Still. And the rest of them had characteristic reactions. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
I wish that the tape recorder had been born, a little miniature one, because we had an exhibition from the band collection, a collection of Canadian painters of the early 20th century for the Depression era stuff. They were quite nice, actually, and I'd never heard of any of them. And, you know, 9/10 of them were winter scenes.
Wow.
But I drove a U-Haul truck. The registrar at the museum had forgotten to prepare the export documents. So we spent hours and hours getting people out of their offices and getting these things set up and signed with incredible inefficiency.
So when did you go to Columbus?
I went to Buffalo in '55. I stayed in graduate school a long time. They kept giving me fellowships. And so I just stayed and audited courses because I had enough courses. I was never really interested in a PhD, and it wasn't a terminal degree for museums then,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't be now. The extra time was worth it.
Did you say that you and Abbott Cummings overlapped?
Yes, at Ohio State. Yeah, he had been in the Army. He was a very nice guy, and I knew him quite well.
Oh, yeah.
We related to each other somehow. But he used to wear galoshes in the summer. I mean, I don't know why, but I guess to avoid the rain or something. But I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 59. I wasn't there very long. It may have been, it was either 3 or 4 years. I was assistant director in Columbus, too. A guy named Hanrai Young, who is a famous Mormon sculptor. He did the seagulls that saved them from the locusts in Salt Lake City. A brilliant conversationalist and a good eye. He had a very good eye. I began to do exhibitions in Columbus. I did one on abstract expressionism, which was easy for me. I did one on German expressionism. Big kerfluffle with the school. They had an art school attached. And Bill Young went off to England to see if he could live on his father's inheritance, who had just died. And he also, the family sold the contents of the studio, apparently to Brigham Young University. His father's sculpted bronze figures of various Indians and things in the Museum of Natural History in New York, and Bill's posed for one of them, kid, a long time ago. But he was a sort of disillusioned man. I mean, he had grown up in a household where all of the important artists of the time passed through one time. He was related to by his mother, J. Alden, that was his mother's brother.
Okay, interesting.
Life was dull after that.
Yeah.
And Bill got bored. the big floof with the school was he was a really bad actor. He had promised his students, for the graduating class, that they would have degrees because they were trying to get that. The parents got mad. And Kanzani thought it was my fault because I've never thought art museums or art schools at an art museum is a good idea. I've forgotten where he went and left this in my lap. Both Kanzani and Young were gone. And I know that this guy had this application, which he denied ever seeing. It was a really interesting lesson about the world, and I just said, to hell with this, I'm going to get out of this.
So Milwaukee was 63?
Yeah, 62. Columbus had a lot of modern pictures, the Howell collection.
Yeah.
It's one of the earliest in the country. And he collected, not in Columbus, but in New York. And he was a bachelor, and he left the collection to the museum. They were all apartment-sized pictures, unfortunately. There were a couple of big Renoir portraits, mostly modest. So lots of Matisse, a few Picasso, everybody else. And good quality, I mean really very good quality. Bill did a good job, I will say that. I mean, I was fairly interesting. Bill never did anything. He never did an exhibition.
Situation with Milwaukee when you arrived?
I think it was 1946 or 7, maybe I'm a little early with that the two museums came together as Layton Art Gallery and the Milwaukee Art Institute, which was an exhibiting organization, and Layton was a collecting organization.
Oh.
And a lot of people were very sentimentally attached to it because it really had a nice late Victorian building, and it was they tore it down when they moved into the War Memorial. The two museums were within a block of each other on one of the side streets down. The War Memorial was on the lakefront. It was a Saarinen building up on stilts. It was one of the earlier modern, really advanced modern buildings in the country, and swelling apart. County maintained it. We got money from the city, and we had two independent boards, as a matter of fact. They were so jealous of each other, or so conservative, that they didn't merge. I was the director of the Milwaukee Art Center and curator of the Layton Art Collection. I don't recall ever being asked my opinion about anything. I know the principle of, the director being the CEO and the inspirer and the manager, and it was a terrible board. The other board wasn't so bad. The Milwaukee Art Institute, it had been called, came together under the name Milwaukee Art Center. Fairly substantial when I first went there, but not like it is today. But in fact, I'm so proud of that place because it has become an important place.
Yeah, well, no question.
Not just for me, but the Calatrava building was a kind of,
Well, were you able to accomplish some things there that you thought took it to the next level?
Yes, we managed to convince the Friends of Art and collectors and other people to give us their art. Volunteer organization, and people will raise money for the purchase of works of art. It's been about $20,000–30,000 a year. And by the time I left there, we're doing $100,000 a year.
Not bad.
Yeah, it was significant. They were really enthusiastic young people, and interestingly enough, they alternated years on the presidency between men and women, which I thought, I loved it because I thought it was such a good idea. It just made it smoother.
Who was
the most important one was, I think, Roger Berner. He was an attorney and was very helpful in lots of things. And he was president for quite a while, a young guy, my age about. He had lots of innovative ideas that I would never have come up with. For instance, I spotted a Courbet in Paris. It was a portrait of Clément Laurier, who was a friend of his in the south of France. And he was a man of some position. And he painted two portraits, one with a guy and his wife. And the wife had gone to the family somewhere, and his portrait was a beautiful Gallic type. He looked like Charles Boyer, if you remember him. But it was just a gorgeous picture. And they were really quite good friends apparently, and he went to visit him to try to recover from the disappointment of his failed exhibition, one-man exhibition, which was, nearly killed him. And it said in great big red script letters, Ami Laurier. And I was just smitten with it. Well, we didn't have that. It cost $50,000. And I had almost given it up when Roger said, how about a bargain sale? And there was a provision in the law that if you bought something for $50,000 and gave it to an institution and got it valued at $60,000, you could deduct the difference. In that case, what, 10,000, but actually it was more than that. I think we finally got it appraised at something like 80 or 90,000, which was a lot at the time. And Friends of Art bought it for the 50,000. Group of people within Friends of Art, so they made individual deductions that way. And a group of people, 8 people, I think it was 8, that Roger Werner had got together, bought it for 50,000. And 3 years later, which was the minimum time, we managed to get it appraised for 90 or 100, something like that. Yeah. To me, it was a miracle. I fell in love with this guy.
Well, I learned this very thing from you because, wheeling and dealing a little bit is a life skill.
Yeah.
And if you can figure out how to get something for 2/3 its retail cost, you can give people a little tax break and you can get something worth quite a bit. It's even legal, right? So, but now, of course, I'm interested in Stanley Stone and the Godfreys and the Vogels and that. How did Milwaukee become such an important center of Americana and decorative arts?
Well, there were some European collectors too. Richard Flagg had the most important collection of 16th century German clocks in the world. He had a house full of them.
Wow.
A guy named Albert Bader. He collected Dutch 17th century painting exclusively.
But as far as Americana and decorative arts, Stanley Stone, that whole phenomenon, how did that all start?
Stanley Stone had been collecting for some time. And Dudley Godfrey and Fred Vogel were the next generation of that collecting. Godfrey had already started. He had a lot of stuff in actually a house that was built out here, a Connecticut house. And it was a beautiful thing. God, it had been a tavern. And God, it just knocked me out. And then Vogel started collecting. I know a few others that had nice pieces, but those were the two. The first time I visited him at Chipstone, he was showing me around the living room, which had 4 shell-carved block front pieces, including a secretary, desk, and so forth, dressing table. He was explaining to me the fine points. These are the very ones that Walton carved for him. And he was telling me all this. I was interested in it. I didn't know a damn thing about the subject at the time. But he ended the conversation, and it was very gracious of him to do this. He was a high and mighty kind of guy. He said, "Now, don't you wish you were Stanley Stone?" I didn't think he liked me. I don't think he liked the art, the building, or anything, the Friends of Art, or anything about the place. He owned the Boston store. Here,
The department store, okay.
4, 5, 6 stories, something like that. He was offensive, he was arrogant, but somehow I couldn't bring myself to dislike him. I mean, I would go to the East Side show, he was there, and he stomped around the show, if you know what I mean. Everything was wrong. He was, Walton was, of course, his favorite dealer.
Yeah.
And I was sorry to see that happen to anybody. A lot of people thought it was just desserts, but I didn't. I felt probably sorry for him because first place is different.
I don't think he lived to learn that.
No, he didn't. No, that's the one fortunate thing about it. Polly did, of course.
Well, Walton wasn't such a charmer either. Well, so what were some things that happened on your watch here that you were really proud of or pleased with?
We discovered Fernando Botero.
Okay.
I gave him his first show, and by pure happenstance, Time magazine was looking for a South American artist to feature. He's Colombian. And the big fat figure is now sculpture. I think the most important thing I did was the Milwaukee River. There was a group of young architects in town that regretted the fact that the city had turned its back on the river. And it had. It was just it wasn't exactly a sewer, but it was just nothing. But there was nothing facing on it. So these guys said, we'd like to join with you to do an exhibition with a scale model of the river and blown up photographs by Walter Scheffer, who was a well-known historical architect, architecture photographer. We had a big attendance, but we couldn't organize the politicians, except on the last fucking day of the show. Along comes John Doyne, who was the county executive, basically the mayor of the county. And he got so excited, he asked us to keep it open for a while so he could show the county council, which he did. They all came. And he went out of there saying, we got to do this. And by God, they did. And I had always been so impressed by the Queen's Museum in New York's influence upon the design in the city. They did it by conscious policy some time ago. And it worked. I mean, there were a lot of distinguished buildings in Queens, New York that wouldn't have been there without the museum. Well, we did the same thing here. We went down to San Antonio. San Antonio was really impressive. Go right straight through the middle of downtown.
Yes.
Yeah.
What were some of the components of the revitalization?
There was a river walk constructed on both sides of the river. Restaurants and bars opened. The Performing Arts Center, which had originally supposed to be on the lakefront as part of the War Memorial Center, but they decided to locate it on the river.
And you're saying that an exhibition you did was the catalyst that made this happen?
Yeah.
And what was in the exhibition?
A scale model of the river.
But was there more?
A lot of big blown-out photographs. Multimedia show. We had a three-projector multimedia show, which a real pro did. It was our guy on the staff, but he was really good at it. He went off to the Smithsonian. There's a guy named Joe Rice.
It doesn't seem like an art project. How did it come about?
Well, it's architecture.
Okay.
And the guy who organized the architects was the one who designed the building that I had just built. So I knew him quite well.
Who was that?
A guy named David Kaler. The firm was Kaler, Slater, and Fitzhugh Scott. David was a good architect. So he designed the second building.
Was this of an era when, I mean, there was a lot of interest in planning and urban renewal and urban revitalization in the early 60s?
There had been.
Was this sort of related to? I mean, how did the museum dip its toe into those waters? It seems to me it must have been of a piece with something.
Well, the impetus came from the young architects. They just decided this was wrong and they'd had enough of it and they were going to do something about it.
Fabulous.
They had no idea it worked, but it's fabulous.
It's really made a difference.
Yeah.
Has the area around the river picked up?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There are apartments on it, and there's some with, landings for
Nice.
yachts.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it's really something. It didn't all happen at once. I mean, the County
20
provided
years.
this substrate, and
Yeah.
people, the developers, did the rest. But I'm really, really proud of that. And I mean, all I was was a catalyst. Not, I mean, the architects were the thrust.
I always felt you let flowers blossom around you. The ability to seize good ideas and not feel like you have to do everything yourself, and to let strong ideas emerge and then provide an environment that lets them flourish. That's the greatest gift of all.
But you know, there were some people that thought it was inappropriate, just as they did the Great Rivers, or the Black Show.
The Simpsons, yeah.
So it was a lot of fun here.
Yeah, no, it's great.
And then I got to be more fun in Hartford.
What made you, I mean, it was just an opportunity to move east and to be at the Atheneum. Why, you've been here,
I had been here long enough.
how many years?
13 years.
13, yeah. That's a good long tenure.
And you could say I was fired. Some people did. But it was an agreement to disagree. This same Roger Bremer initiated it. And he did me the biggest favor. Whether or not to get more political money, you know, from the governments, the county and the city, or to remain private. We had been largely private from the program point of view. The public contributions were for maintenance and security, but we depended on the public for Friends of Art as well as the annual fund, which was fairly big. And the politicians were telling me that time was right to seek more support from that source. And Milwaukee has a home rule constitution, or Wisconsin does. And a county, to do something like that, has to have a majority vote of all of its towns. Can't just do it by itself. So we spent about 6 months going around.
Were you in favor of the political ask, or was Bernier?
I thought that it was our best chance, that was the government.
Oh, and he didn't.
No.
Well, you were, for better or for worse, you were on the right side of history.
Yeah. I was certainly on the right side for myself.
Yeah. 1977, what was the situation in Hartford when you arrived?
People loved the place. Attendance was high. And education level was incredibly high.
In terms of the board or staff?
And the board, too.
And the audience?
And the audience, yeah. This is a workaday place.
Yeah.
In this town. And the German population had always supported music and drama better than art. And the Public Museum had a we were terrific competitors for the private dollar. Although the Public Museum was entirely supported by the city of Milwaukee, they eventually went to the town, or the county, as we were for Ken Starr. Yeah, he was head of the American Association of Museums later.
So you arrived and board at the Atheneum was, I mean, Tom Cox was he the?
Yeah, yeah. Tom was, I mean, it was sort of like, here's your new boss, support him.
Yeah.
And he cleaned up the mess so that I didn't have to, which I thought was really very noble of him.
What was the mess?
Oh, the staff was incompetent and too big. And they had that theater program that was just burdening them. Well, there were classes.
Well, that's what I mean, the art classes.
Yeah, there were still classes.
But that ended not long after you must have put the end of that.
And it was too bad, I thought, because, you know, the thing you hear constantly is, oh, I love that museum so much. I went to art classes when I was a kid. It was clearly an audience builder.
Why did it end?
Why did
it end?
We needed the space, for one thing, and it wasn't doing that well. And there was the art school at the university.
Yeah, although I suppose the Atheneum Art School maybe it was a different client.
Well, it got us the collection of one of the most important artists in the world in Hartford.
Solowit?
Yeah.
Oh, because he went to art school there?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And he went to art school there back in the days when it was training artists, you know, not just kids.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much you knew even about your predecessor, but he probably wasn't too focused on the fiscal responsibility aspects, and I could easily see them having spent their way into a hole. And the Atheneum famously celebrated the bicentennial with its American collection stuffed away in storage because they couldn't, so much turmoil. This would be the year before you arrived.
It came at just the right time for me because I had enough of contemporary art. I was plateauing off like you do. And to be at a museum with a little money and lots of old masters was, wow, was that exciting. I was really glad. Tom Cox is a miracle worker. I've never known any man my whole life as effective as that man. I mean, he was commanding, he was humorous, smart as a whip. He understood public relations because that's his business, or was his business. And of course, his son, which was just as good as he was at most of those things. Although he did the hard part.
Who else was on the board in those early years for you? In other words, who did you find supportive, effective?
Dorothy Archibald was a big support. Jet Koopman
yeah.
And the Uncone, yeah. I loved her.
Yeah, she's great. She's still around.
They were short of money, in spite of all the things they had going for them. And the strategy that I suggested to him, he suggested it to me, I think, but I was all for it. It was to utilize the permanent collection for exhibition on Commons.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We had a huge collection in storage, and I added that to the success of the Matrix and the developing popularity of the Dossier show, which had started in Boston and spread to London, where you have just one picture and you interpret the hell out of it, or you know, a small group of things. And I thought that was a good answer because we had all the material to work with. In every case, we didn't have the kind of supporting material we needed, so that you had a constant stream of people going through there, rather than great big crowds at any one time. Well, it didn't work because we didn't need to. United Technologies walked in one day and said, we'd like to support the exhibition program, your major show, every year, maybe two, and along with a supporting advertising and exhibition program. And it was the two guys who developed the mobile theater that Harry Great hired. It was Ray D'Argenio. And
do you recall some of the first projects that United Technology sponsored?
The first one was Visions of the Sea, which is in the American collection. Yeah. They had some conditions, and I was talked about often, corporate support in the Art Museum Directors Association conventions and other meetings with colleagues. And I had heard these guys saying, you don't dare do it because they'll dictate your life for you. Well, they didn't. They wanted to sponsor the shows because they admired the quality of the place and the art and the ideas. And it was their hometown. I was gratified by the fact that others will stand back. The companies in this town followed pretty well.
But this would have been the Harry Gray era.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying that after in other words, United Technologies started the corporate public support with the art program. Who followed?
The Steve Weiler did something.
Okay.
Chris was always picking up projects here and there. He was very good at that. And Gregory was a good salesman.
Oh, yeah. Like the opening of those American galleries in '84 was one of the most exciting things I ever felt like I was part of.
You guys were all the most exciting people I ever worked with.
How did it started with the Caribbean art, and then Amistad and the whole Simpson thing.
That was one of the biggest successes and failures at the same time. That was conceived, that whole thrust towards the African diaspora. That was those exhibitions we did were supposed to be a whole series on that theme because there's a lot of them, and we were planning on, expanding it into music and drama and other dance, and we did a certain amount of that. But it was supposed to have touched the entire black population, eventually. And after Gregory and I don't know, Chris, it was an idea worth pursuing.
Oh, you mean to go beyond where you?
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
beyond what we did.
To make it a whole cultural.
Yeah, just keep it going. Well, they kept diluting it and become the grand scheme that I hoped it would.
Yeah.
It stopped. Do we have all those Jamaicans? Did we ever do anything with Jamaican art?
Yeah, right.
That was the whole point of it, everybody in the community. And my point about that was that there's no reason why you can't serve your population. In spite of the fact that we know there was a lot of prejudice against the idea, including some people that really surprised me. I was, just once at a cocktail party, was I backed against the wall and just harangued for this.
Who were the big champions that were supporting you? Obviously,
Jim Lyon, for
yeah,
one thing.
yeah.
And Chris, of course, I mean, he was really a leader towards Scott.
Yeah. Sandy Cloud?
Sandy was essential
Yeah.
to the whole thing. And in fact, so was the whole thing essential, because we may well have ceased to get any public support to speak of if we hadn't done it.
Yeah, well, I think that's great.
Yeah, Precious Legacy. I went down to Harrington's bookstore and said, well, that was a nice guy that owned it. I said, well, gee, I hope we have some more Jewish friends this morning. And he said, no, what you have is some Jewish friends now.
Maybe there was a feeling that there was some old guard kind of protectivism.
Well, Hartford was a good place for Jews.
Yeah.
Because there's so many refugees came here during
Yeah.
the war. And I had come from that to this situation where there were old Jewish families because of the tobacco industry, I suppose.
Terrific. You're great.
Well, you can always call me and we can do more.